Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am so excited to have both of you here today, Dr. Lack and Dr. Maas. Longtime friend Grayson, thank you very much for joining us today. And Dr. Lack, thank you so much for answering my LinkedIn when I was like, hey, we need to hear your story about how you got AOPS into your entire school district. Your entire bios are going to be on the show notes here, so we don't need to go through the entire bio. What really jumped out at me is one, that you're an award-winning educator, you're a math specialist, and you have a band, which you were just telling me about. You're located in Forsyth County, I hope I'm saying that correctly, in Georgia. And I would just love to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about the big question here is, how are you using AOPS in your school district? How did you discover it? And what are you finding? What are you finding as far as its outcomes? Thank you so much.
Yeah, first, let me just say I'm delighted to be here, and thank you to LinkedIn. I'm mostly a Twitter user, and I find that I don't get a lot of reaction to my posts there. And so I've been talking to some friends, and they've said, try LinkedIn, and that's how I met you at the MathFest conference in Indianapolis. I posted about my poster presentation, which is right here behind me, which I was very proud of. I told the story of how our county has developed a blueprint for math enrichment for grades K through 8, which is the area that I lead. And so I'm absolutely delighted to be here. My journey starts, I'll start in 2010. I was a middle school math teacher, and I had been invited to a math competition, and I took my team. We barely had any time to practice. And we showed up and we cleaned house. And I enjoyed the problems so much. They were unlike anything I'd experienced in the classroom curriculum. And that's really what ignited my passion for mathematics. That's interesting. The true treatment of mathematics that we should be giving in schools. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But so I discovered art of problem solving through Math Counts, probably the premier middle school math competition series in the United States. And I was familiar with their products for the longest time. But I met Grayson and the wonderful people at AOPS at NAGC in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 2000, I think it was 19. It was right before the world changed drastically, right? And I was very surprised and thrilled to come to understand that Art of Problem Solving was looking to expand Beast Academy, their wonderful math curriculum for elementary middle school students, into the public schools. I was familiar with the curriculum because my own personal children, I have two boys that had gone through the books and had gone through the online program, and but I had no idea that they had a vision of getting into the public schools. And so I came back to Georgia as a man on a mission. I knew that we needed this curriculum in our schools, and in 2020, it was sort of the perfect storm because of the pandemic, and we were doing the online learning, and AOPS was offering a nice promotion to try out Beast Academy online. We started with a pilot of maybe 200 students whose principals were willing to let us try it out. And each year we've grown this program. We pretty much doubled it almost every single year. Now we're at 5,000 users across grades 1 through 5. Grayson has an amazing vision. Obviously, we don't want to stop giving kids this wonderful curriculum after 5th grade, and so we've started to use the Art of Problem Solving ebooks with our middle school and high school students. And so I'm even more excited now that in terms of expanding this wonderful curriculum to the masses, we're also trying out, we're in a pilot phase with Beast Academy Classroom, which is a core curriculum that Art of Problem Solving is developing, and I'm sure Grayson will say more about that. So that's how the journey started many years ago, and of course, I glossed over a lot of really rich, good stuff in between, but I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about that today.
Yeah, I will pest you with that. And I think that what you've offered here is a great bridge to introducing Grayson, who I've known for, gosh, back to probably 2011 or 12 when school started not working for our son. So it's going on just over a decade, I think, Grayson. And I have been so fascinated by your story and your vision for AOPS. So without any further ado, I'm going to just open the floor to you to introduce yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Great to be here with everyone. So my story really I've been an education lifer. I've always been fascinated by education. I care deeply about it, always have. And I pursued a doctoral degree in actually sociocultural anthropology, but with an emphasis in education, and kind of using an anthropological toolkit to understand schools as sites of reproduction of meaningful identities of students, and how those identities can be created and really bolstered and supported, and in certain cases where that's not happening, how they can be kind of stymied. And so that work took place at the University of California, Santa Barbara. At the time, still, I would say maybe like the first 3 years of that work, I had my heart and my mind set on being a tenure track university professor. I loved the work. I love teaching. Still love teaching. I get to do that in a different way now. But about midway through that experience, I became more fascinated by actually, getting closer to the students and wanting to be a part of an organization that I felt was making a meaningful difference in the world already, and then that really also had ambitions of doing even more good with each passing year. And so in a serendipitous turn of fate, I happened to be looking at openings and things like that on the market, and I came across Art of Problem Solving, and I was just taken by two things really: the mission and the people. And I think that's kind of like the North Star here for us. Our mission is to discover, inspire, and train the great problem solvers of the next generation, which that really resonated with me. And then, diving into who are the people that work here, what are the things that they care about? And very similar to me, we're all mission-oriented people, and we all care very deeply about education and what it is that we're trying to do here. So I've been with Art of Problem Solving for, as Ali mentioned, about almost a decade now, and have worn a lot of different hats while I've been here. But significantly, and again, just like with Brian, I'm probably glossing over a lot of important stuff, but in the interest of time, I'll just move things right along. About 5 or 6 years ago, even though Art of Problem Solving actually came into existence as an organization in 2003, I would say it took us until about 2018, 2019, and still until we started to really have an intentional strategy for how we can support schools. Up until that time, we had done a really good job and cared a lot about and focused a lot of our energies into how we can, create problem solvers kind of outside of the school space. So in homes, in learning centers, vast homeschool operations, these kinds of things. To this day, we still serve those communities quite well, and our efforts there are increasing. But we've added another very important layer to that work, which is to reach students in schools. From an equity standpoint, this is important because not every student has parents who understand, let's say, the value of what it is that an organization like ours can provide. And even if they did, a lot of parents might not, let's say, necessarily have the means to afford these kinds of opportunities for their students. So we want to reach students everywhere that we can. And so a very important layer of that is to go into schools directly. It gives us another opportunity to make a meaningful difference. So fast forward to today, we work with students in schools in all 50 states, even internationally as well. And for the most part, even though we have art of problem solving, so when I say art of problem solving, yes, that is our organization, but from a curriculum standpoint, the art of problem solving curriculum begins in earnest with pre-algebra and then moves all the way through calculus. Plus, being the good math geeks that we are, we do a number of things that you probably wouldn't find in schools, such as discrete mathematics, number theory, counting and probability. And then we also, again, true to our core and where we started, we have like a robust suite of opportunities for students who have aspirations of competing and succeeding at a high level in the math competition network, which is what Brian mentioned as well before. I would say for the most part, where we're seeing that we're making the greatest difference, and where I think the greatest difference needs to be made and addressed, is in elementary school. So that takes us to Beast Academy. Beast Academy is our elementary math curriculum. Even though it covers what we call levels 1 through 5, quite honestly, it's really a good fit in our experience for students that are ages 6 to 13, given kind of the rigorous and advanced nature of it. And without the risk of me just like blabbering on forever, I just want to get this one key point out, and then maybe we can go from there. One thing that we're trying to do here at AOPS, and specifically with Beast Academy, is to really kind of change what math is and what it feels like for students and for teachers. And what I mean by that is that historically and traditionally, math has been something that is overly procedural, overly rote, algorithmic, like, you know, here's a problem structure, here are the steps you need to take to solve that problem. Now here's a worksheet with 20 problems that look structurally identical to that problem. Follow the steps that you've learned or maybe memorized and move on to the next thing. We believe that that leaves a lot to be desired. And so instead, we kind of flip that model on its head, and we give students access to interesting, rigorous, non-routine problems that require creative solutions. And in so doing, help students build skills, what we call 21st century skills, that include problem solving, critical thinking, and creative reasoning. And we believe that not only if you're well versed in that skill set, not only are you going to be better at math in terms of achievement and everything like that, but that's a skill set that really transcends math, and quite honestly, it transcends school. So what we're trying to do, again, discover, inspire, train the great problem solvers of the next generation. We're trying to build that skill set in students to just make them more confident, competent thinkers, period. Now that can serve you really well in math, but it's going to serve you really well outside of math. You know, this ability to look at a problem that you don't know how to solve right away, and instead of shying away from it and saying, I don't know how to solve that, no one's ever taught me, a Beast Academy student, an art of problem solving student, seeing that problem after having been versed in our curriculum, will be more likely to lean in and say, you know, I don't know how to solve it right away, but I think I can figure it out.
Yes, and through that, as you've noticed in some of your research, you change the student's self-concept around math at an early age, which is vitally important. And that gets to the equity issues around elementary school math education, where we actually really need to close gaps. Brian and I were talking before we went live about the 30% and 20% disparities, respectively, between race and ethnicity, so Black and white students, and economically disadvantaged students in elementary school. I've been impatient to get past those for more than a decade. And so I think the promise of Beast Academy and what you're doing is to close those gaps. Brian, I would love to go back to that pilot that you mentioned of about 200 kids, and just dig in a little bit into how did you figure out which kids you wanted to start with, and then how have you expanded it? And I'll contextualize this with my role as chair of the Gifted Citizens Advisory Committee is to bring innovations and research and thinking, expert opinion from the gifted community back to our school board. And so I'm recording this conversation so that they have access to this. So think as if you are a school board member and you're thinking about the entire population. Okay, and where do we start with this? Where did you start? How are you growing it? And what outcomes are you noticing in your groups? I know that's a lot, but I wanted you to be able to roam a little bit. Oh, you're on mute.
Great question there. Thank you. As you know, introducing any kind of change or initiatives in school is a very complex endeavor. And so we usually start with just offering information like, hey, here is a problem we are trying to solve. We have a lot of students that are bored in math, okay? And so we were sort of implicitly addressing the gifted or the advanced math students. And we just said, anybody who's willing to give this a try in grade 5, while students are engaged in at-home remote learning, let's give it a try. And we did that. But I was very intentional in that I wanted to collect data from the users, both the students and the teachers, during and at the end of their experience. What did they like about it? What did they get out of it? How did they interact with it? What else did they want? And we came back with some very impressive results, very undeniable results. I shared with our superintendent of teaching and learning, the principals, and so there was this automatic interest in growing the program. Now, we did sort of bill it as a program that is it's a differentiated solution for students who need enrichment. One of the problems that we struggle with in elementary math in particular is developing or curating really good, solid enrichment resources. Oftentimes, by default, what elementary teachers will do is find something that they find online through like Teachers Pay Teachers or something like that that's not really well vetted, not really well designed. Sometimes project-based learning where there's not really a lot of rigorous math involved. And so we wanted to kind of take that whole challenge away by just giving them really well-designed math curriculum. And so that was part of the sell. And so the next year, after we looked at those results, we developed a plan to just slowly increase the number of students each year, and we made it voluntary. And so in the 2020-2021 school year, I think we had 500 students. Again, I supported all the schools. We went through the gifted teachers at first, but then we started expanding to math teachers who were teaching advanced math content, or just had some, 4 or 5 really high-flying students that needed a challenge. And it was sort of a cycle of, at the end of the year, let's collect more data from our users, and let's demonstrate a need for expanding this, taking it to scale. And so last year, we had so many cases where a school would reach out and say, hey, I've got a student who's not gifted, but they really love math, they're doing well, and they're bored, they're fast learners. Can we give this program to them? And I'm like, sure. Of course, we have budgetary restraints, and so I had a finite number of licenses. And so one of the things that I heard constantly from my teachers is, we need more licenses. We need greater access to Beast Academy. It's not just for gifted students. And so I was very aggressive, and we went from 2,500 to 5,000 licenses. And so we've got a lot. I would venture to say that probably more than half of our students that use Beast Academy are not identified as gifted students. They're not in the gifted program. And we're not done. We want to continue to expand that with, like I said, Beast Academy Classroom as well, and other options. So that's how we've done it. And now it's pretty much a grassroots movement. Like it's the kids and the parents of the kids and the teachers. Once they see what Beast Academy is all about, and it's not just another run-of-the-mill math solution, that kids are just dying to get in their hands. It's a really, really easy conversation to have with someone above me to say, hey, we need more licenses, we need more access to this curriculum.
Brian, what is it the teachers are appreciating about it?
Really, it's the response they're seeing from their students. Their students are truly engaged in math. And I think a lot of it is this. It goes back to what you mentioned at the very beginning. Grayson also said, unfortunately, in the United States, the typical American math curriculum in K-12, it doesn't elicit, to me, what is most important about mathematics, what makes it such a beautiful subject, the fascination of patterns and playfulness and things like that, right? And so math becomes a very rote, boring sort of exercise. And so, there's a guy named Sunil Singh who wrote a book called Math Recess. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but he's a constant critic of the way that math is treated in schools. And what I have noticed is that when you treat the subject of mathematics the way that Art of Problem Solving or Beast Academy does, and you really lean into that playfulness, that beauty of non-routine problem solving, the puzzles. No other curriculum has the types of logic puzzles and arithmetic puzzles that Beast Academy includes. It's kind of like how when Candy Crush first came out, and those games, they're just really addictive because they're so fun and they make you think. And that's exactly what Beast Academy is for learners. It's something that it's just different, and it really leans into those 21st century thinking skills that Grayson mentioned earlier.
Now, all of us are huge fans of Beast Academy and Art of Problem Solving, and I've used it in my own family, and I've recommended it to other people, and I've seen people flourish with it. I will say, though, like 1 out of every 10 recommendations will fall flat because the parent will try it with the kid and the kid's just not into it. I have seen intelligent kids just have some resistance around it still. And I think that we need to be honest that about what is driving that resistance. And it can be very typical gifted kid. This is actually really hard, and it's harder than anything I've actually ever seen in school before, sort of resistance, which is very understandable. And that's an opportunity for the parent to learn how to be a good coach and a support, not go in and rush and solve the problem for the child, but allow the child to begin to have that ability to persist through struggle, which is so vitally important to problem solving. It may not be something they've done before. But I'm just kind of curious about your response to that, because that would be some pushback maybe that educators might have, or a school board member might have, or even a parent might have experienced. Hey, my kid just didn't take to it. How do you respond to that? What have you seen supports the teacher in that situation?
You talking there reminds me of a TED Talk that I think a lot of people have seen by Dan Meyer many years ago. And he calls it patient problem solving. That's not how we're typically taught to solve math problems. It's like Grayson said, there's a predictable structure. Here's a process for solving the problem in under 30 seconds if you just apply this every time. And that's not fair to the discipline of mathematics, because it's messy, right? And so I think a lot of it is retraining anybody who's experienced mathematics in that way, which is going to be the vast majority of our teachers, our leaders, our parents. And, again, one of the ways that I've been successful with that is 2 years ago, we were evaluating curriculum for a new adoption. And one thing I never did in the past, that I think was the reason why a lot of our curriculum adoptions were met with lots of challenges from different vantage points, is because we never really preceded it with a clear vision. And that's one of the things we did in this process. We made sure that we collectively drafted a vision based on 21st century needs. And it's exactly what Grayson said. It's creative problem solving, critical thinking that requires perseverance, patience, all those attributes, right? And so it's fundamentally different than the way we experience math. And so I went around to every single school and to LSC parent meetings, and I presented this vision in a way that I think was very accessible and relatable to all of our stakeholders. And I can tell you this, I didn't get a lot of resistance. I certainly did not get the same resistance that something like the Common Core rollout did, because like I said, it was just, it was so relatable to the audience that I was sharing it with. And so I think a lot of it is just, helping people understand that, today's skills that we need in society and to be successful problem solvers are very different than what we needed in the past. And convincing people of that is something that I think can be taken for granted, but it's so critical in getting, students to see, and parents and teachers and leaders, that a curriculum like Beast Academy has tremendous value in our schools.
I'm going to jump in and just ask one more question and open it up maybe to Grayson too on the topic of equity. We certainly have in this school district some data that suggests that 43% of elementary school gifted children say that their math curriculum is not challenging enough. 43%. We know that. So we know, like you in Georgia, in your county, that there is an issue with a robust math curriculum. We also know by looking at gifted student self-report and parent report data in the school district of 75,000, where we have roughly 13,000 are gifted, about 20% are gifted. So we have a sizable population that's identified gifted. I'm not sure how that compares to your county, Brian, so you might comment on that. We know that throughout the grade levels, we have difficulty with good fit math. And so as we go up in the grade levels, roughly a third of the students are saying math is too easy, roughly a third are saying it's too difficult, and roughly a third is saying it's okay. So, I mean, it almost seems like random chance that we could throw a book out there and maybe have the right fit, and that's not what we want. When we talk about differentiated instruction, we actually want to tailor the instruction to the needs of the child, or we're going to have 66% of the kids, 2/3 of them, very frustrated, either underachieving or in water that's way too deep for them. So that kind of gets to the equity question, which is, shouldn't a good program be available to all students? You know, we have students in our district who are struggling, right? We have fewer than, I don't remember the exact percent, but passing our end of year tests, the SOLs here in Virginia. So big disparities in even being able to pass what we consider the minimums. Meanwhile, our gifted students, 99% of them are passing the minimums. We know nothing else about them. We don't even know if they're growing. We know nothing with the data that we're collecting. So how do you, I know that you're expanding your program, and Grayson has some data on this too, so maybe I'll turn to you, Grayson. How do we use an innovative program like Art of Problem Solving to actually meet all students where they are, which is actually where I want to go, not just gifted kids, but all students, because we're not identifying all the gifted kids. Our testing data is flawed too. So we have gifted kids who are not even identified. Go for it, Grayson, or I'll keep talking.
All right, no, I got it. So that's correct. We are eminently aware of this pervasive problem as well, and we're making strides to, in our own small way, try and make a difference. Couple things. Going back to some of the earlier conversations that we were having, you mentioned, because I just wanted to, and I will answer that question, but I just wanted to pick up on one thing before. So, you know, you mentioned this idea of a lot of students maybe seeing this novel approach, which will look and feel quite different from what they're used to, and it should be hard, right? Like, we all know the term productive struggle, and we believe in it. Now, something can't be debilitatingly difficult, right? It has to be appropriately scaffolded and given to students in the right way so that they can latch on to that challenge and grow from there. I mean, growth only happens from hard things, right? If you're only doing things that you know how to do very easily, very quickly, you're never going to grow, right? So we believe in that. The thing that I think, just like philosophically and conceptually, that we could, everyone, when I say we, that's like the collective we could do better about getting students to like open that door of possibility for them for what this type of math could be. It's really about falling in love with the problem and not the solution, really. Like the journey of problem solving, like trying something, having it not work, being reflective, learning from that, trying something else, having that still not work, and then not being discouraged. And then ultimately finding a path where it does work, where you really understand why it works, not just the mechanics of how it works, but you understand why it works. And then the true intellectual joy that comes from persevering and then getting to that point. If we can help students have more of those experiences, I think it's just so much more enriching. And then what we're finding is that when this is done right, with the right support, as I believe it's very much happening in Forsyth with all of Brian's schools and teachers, is that, you know, you get more buy-in, and you get more students saying like, no, like, I want to do this. We hear all of these fun stories from schools where like one quick one in the homes and one quick one in the schools. So like with schools, some schools, they might have their math block right before recess. And then once they start getting into the spirit of Beast Academy, students will protest recess because they're like, no, like, I want to keep working on this problem. Like, when we hear stories like that, we're like, okay, we're doing it right. Similarly in the homes, we hear parents write in, they're like, thank you so much for this approach. It's really opened things up for my daughter or my son. But I got to tell you, this is tongue in cheek a little bit, but it's like, but I got to tell you, like, we're running into some, like behavior issues now because they won't go to bed on time. They're sneaking their Beast Academy books up into their room and then like reading them, by flashlight and staying up later than they are supposed to. And we're like, okay, if students are becoming addicted to math books, like, again, we feel like we're doing something right. So that's, we'll take that as a win, right? On the equity piece, so there's a couple different things that we're doing in a couple different ways to kind of think about this. So I mentioned to you previously, let's take Beast Academy at first. We intentionally call what we've created levels 1 through 5, not grade levels 1 through 5 or grades 1 through 5 mathematics. And this is important because when introducing this new way of doing and thinking about math, we don't want to, prematurely put students in boxes based on some, designation that's been, carrying on for decades about like, well, if you're this age and you're in this grade, you need to see these things. Well, like maybe, but also like maybe not, right? So we have a wealth now of different anecdotes and experiences that we've collected from other schools that are using what we've made in ways that we didn't even anticipate. When I tell people what Beast Academy is, I already mentioned a little bit about it, but another thing that it is from the people who made it is it's just quite frankly the math curriculum we wish we had when we were kids. One that moves away from the drill and kill and everything like that and moves into something far more interesting. Yes, more challenging, but far better, right? And so I'll give you a example on like the complete other side of the spectrum. So when Beast Academy gets into school systems, it's, let's say the path of least resistance is most commonly as an enrichment resource for high ability students, gifted and talented students, academically advanced students. There are many other labels, but we know the kinds of students that we're talking about, right? We've worked with Albuquerque Public Schools for a number of years now, and they've really taken to this approach. Initially, it was to serve as an enrichment supplement for the GT identified kiddos. And then teachers, as they really kind of sunk their teeth into this, started seeing greater possibilities for how this could benefit not just advanced students, but perhaps all students. And so something that leadership did over there that they shared with us, and we thank them for this, is, they were curriculum planning for the school year ahead. This was a couple years ago at this point. And they wanted to try something new. And the new thing that they tried was taking a group of 6th graders who were several years behind their proficiency understanding of like what they need to demonstrate to matriculate. And they went to leadership, this group of teachers, and they were like, we want to try something different this year with these students. We do not want to use, and I don't particularly like this word, but it's the one that's used, but it's the one everyone knows. They didn't want to use the remedial math option because they were like, it didn't work last year. It didn't work the year before. Why do we think it's going to magically work for them this year? It's not inspiring. And going back to my identity stuff, when students receive math that is uninspired, that is watered down, that is kind of, curated to be like, hey, this is like the bare minimum stuff that you need to know, the implicit and even explicit messaging that you're giving to that student is that it's like, you're not really capable, right? Like, these other kids over here, they're more capable of some other stuff, but like, let's just give you this one. It's like really simple, right? And so that creates this negative feedback loop where students become less interested, more math phobic, more frightened of even engaging in math. And it kills their confidence. So instead they were like, what if we gave Beast Academy level 3 to these 6th graders instead, and then see what happens. Mm-hmm. And this wonderfully amazing thing happened that the lights came back on. Number one, I suspect that this is because Beast Academy aesthetically looks far different from other approaches. Our textbook, if you will, is a graphic novel concept, right? So that already looks a little bit different, and it could at least pique the interest of a student who you may have lost at least up to that point of thinking that maybe math isn't for me, but I really like stories and I really like characters and I really like maybe, graphic novels. So what's this? This is interesting. Okay, I'm listening, right? And then when they're there, the math feels so much different. And why this worked for them is that they took these 6th graders and they went back to a place where math had missed them. I don't want to put it on the students, not the students missed the math, it's the math missed them. Going back to a place where they still had a modicum of confidence about like, okay, well, I know how to do multiplication. I know how to do these things. So let me try a multiplication puzzle where multiplication alone won't get you through it, but maybe multiplication with some, light deductive reasoning and things like this. And then they started building and growing and building and growing. And two things happened by the end of this year. Number one, qualitative differences in how students saw themselves in math. Number one, they started saying things which teachers had not heard them say for several years, which is like, I think I like math. I think I can do math, right? And as curriculum developers ourselves, it doesn't matter how well designed or well intentioned a curriculum is. If students don't want to do it, if they don't want to be there, it's as if you've never made it in the first place. So you have to get that buy-in, you have to get that engagement. And then once you have the student, are you building them up? Are you building their skills and their confidence? And so on the other side, what happened here is that the achievement that the students made was far greater than what they had anticipated. Now, you're never going to make up 3 years of missed math in 1 year, but I suspect with this kind of outside the box thinking approach, you'll be able to make up a lot more ground than you might otherwise have anticipated. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's kind of thinking that has emerged in the last couple of years, I believe, with instead of remediation, let's actually do acceleration. So we're not just making a year up with each year, we're actually trying to close the gaps more quickly. So that's fascinating. Grayson, I'm glad I held it together listening to you talk, because I always get so emotional and so passionate about your vision and what you're seeing Beast Academy able to do in a public school system. I share your passion for this so much. Brian, thinking about how to encourage a school district to start with a small adoption, what are your thoughts about a good place to start? Like, for instance, what data are you bringing back to say, hey, we'd really love more licenses? What are you finding is resonating as far as that kind of data and feedback? It may be anecdotal, it may be quantitative. What is working for you?
It's a blend of the two. Like I said, the first year we created a user survey and we allowed students to answer questions about the experience. We some open-ended, some closed questions. And, we actually build it to teachers as this is not a very heavy lift. It's not something you're going to have to do a ton of extra prep for. Okay, and that's huge. But the sort of unintended consequence there is that when the kids are doing it, and let's say they run into a problem that they can't solve, what are they going to do? Naturally, they're probably going to ask their teacher. Teacher's going to come over, look at the screen, and be like, whoa, I've never seen anything like this. Is what's going on here? This is like, what are we supposed to do here? And so then the teachers naturally get curious and they have questions. And then, in some of our best classrooms, they'll devise a system where students are collaboratively working together. We've gravitated towards Peter Liljedahl's Building Thinking Classrooms strategies, where students are making their thinking visible on vertical whiteboards on the wall so that everyone can see their thinking. And so we have a lot of teachers who have sort of melded the two. But then also we use the data that we get from the reports in the Beast Academy platform in terms of usage. We're seeing a lot of our usage happen after school hours. And so we've gotten to the point now where we've had to be very clear about our expectation that Beast Academy should be used in the classroom in a certain part of our math block, especially when the data demonstrates a need that a student needs a certain level of enrichment, or they need some novelty in terms of like, the puzzle lab or something like that. And so we've used a nice blend of data. But I also want to say that, Beast Academy and the products by AOPS are one part of our full enrichment program. We also have found it very, very beneficial to have family mathematics festivals. We use the Julia Robinson Mathematics Festivals resources, which do a really good job of helping our parents see that math is not just what they see in their students' homework at night, right? And so through the use of these very low threshold, high ceiling, non-routine tasks, puzzles that are quite honestly just infectious. we've gotten them to see that, hey, this is a lot of the experience that Beast Academy also offers in their curriculum that no other mathematics curriculum provides. And so that's been a critical part of getting the message out about what makes Beast Academy different.
What, from your poster presentation behind you, would you like to share with folks?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I kind of mentioned that in 2010, I discovered the wonderful world of math competitions. But one of the other things that I talk about in here is that my own autobiographical experience with competitive math. I will tell students at math competitions, which I coordinate over a dozen each year for our system, that you know, I myself was a great math student in school, made straight A's, did really well in class, didn't have to practice a lot. But I remember going to my first math competition and just absolutely getting destroyed, being stuck on one problem that I'd never seen before for the entire duration of the contest. And by the time I'd solved it, you know, the competition was over. And I say in this poster that, you know, that experience alone is what drives my passion to offer the experiences that I didn't get when I was a student in school. I thought I had hit the ceiling, right, when I was in my math classes, and it's really not the ceiling at all. And so you know, I've just worked really hard to sort of spread this passion around this district, and you know, people know about it, and it's really grown, and I'm very proud of that.
You know, that's such a good point, because I didn't have math competitions either, and I did not have a good self-concept as a math learner in high school, even all the way up through high school. I got into college and didn't understand why they were drawing large S's on the board, because I had managed to place into calculus in college, but really honestly wasn't prepared for it. And here I am, an epidemiologist now with a love for math and being told that I'm actually rather intuitive. So there's a lot of opportunity for people who don't grow up with, you know, really robust math experience. And you're making me think we don't actually have many math competitions in our district that I'm aware of. You're right. So that may be an opportunity that I could explore. Maybe I just don't know about them and we're not publicizing them very well, but that certainly is an opportunity. At this point, if it's okay with you, I'd love to take the last 10 or 12 minutes or so and open it up to Linda, and my friend Jennifer McKendry is on here as well. And Kim Mayo is parent of younger student. But Jennifer is a gifted teacher and now a mother, and was the former chair of the same Citizens Advisory Committee that I'm now chair of. So I lean on Jennifer an awful lot for being a co-conspirator in initiatives here in this district, and just understanding the world of the teachers, you know, trying to reach these gifted students. So if either one of you, I know Jennifer is driving, so she may not jump right on, but Linda, if you would like to just reflect on anything and share thoughts or questions, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I would love to. I have cards with lots of notes and questions and things. So, I work for Steam Truck. We're a mobile makerspace in Metro Atlanta. We serve Metro Atlanta, and we're starting to reach out to rural communities. We bring kids builds, basically, and so we embed math and science within a build. So we don't teach, we do with kids. It's all experiential, hands-on. And so there are two things that we're getting into that really speaks to what you all are talking about today. And everything you said is very rich, and I really appreciate it. One is we're really moving from a student-centered model into a teacher-centered model. And so we are really doing hands-on experiences with teachers now at a greater clip than with students, because we find obviously they have, you know, that's the amplifier, right, is teachers. And so I heard you say you collectively drafted a vision, Brian, based on 21st century needs. That collective drafting, we're now funded through a large Boys Weta grant for 3 years to be in schools with teachers. We're starting with administrators. So my question to you both, actually, all three of you, is as you move forward and you start to extend this understanding of non-routine math, where do administrators fit in? Because they can make or break something, they can jump on board and then jump off because they don't have deep understanding. So where do they fit in?
I can start. It's in my opinion, it is like I said, it's a complex ecosystem, right? And it's a partnership. And so for me to sort of spread this vision and grow and put it into action, there's a lot of reciprocal interplay between. I think the biggest is the community of the school and the leaders. The leaders have to hear from the parents of the children, which is ultimately who we serve. That this is what they want, right? That this is what we need in our community, and so that's why I said it's more than just introducing a product or a new curriculum. It's thinking about this whole ecosystem and how can we get parents involved in these conversations, and that has been the biggest asset in terms of messaging the leaders, in my opinion.
Thank you. And I do have one other little question. If somebody like us, this little nonprofit, we're in schools, and we're also serving out of school time populations. We want to start using AOPS or BEAST in some way, because I can see that is a piece that we don't have. We don't have puzzles. We're building things, but how cool would it be to incorporate that? What would you suggest as a first step? Would it be what would a first step be, I guess?
Grayson, you want to take that one, or?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't know who was going to go there. So yeah, so I think one of the things that has allowed us to work really well with, and I don't want to say just schools, but let's call this institutions, really of all kinds, is to build our resources in a way and then deliver them in a way that's very flexible. So whether it's nonprofits, public schools, private schools, charter schools, homeschool, charter school, hybrids. We currently work with all of these institution types, and what that relationship looks like can be a little bit different for each. So just like very nuts and bolts here when it comes to like introducing Beast Academy into really any of these spaces or systems. We really have like broadly speaking, three implementation options. So we have Beast Academy started as a book series. We have the guidebooks. These are the graphic novels. There are the workbooks, which are kind of like the consumable practice books where students will see a variety of engaging problems. And then we have standalone puzzle books. We're very big on puzzles. Brian mentioned this as well. It just creates so many like natural and organic opportunities for students to think outside the box and think creatively. And build that grit and perseverance and everything like that. Because puzzles won't have I know how to solve it right away kind of experience for the students. So books, online only, or like a blended learning approach where you're kind of doing both with the students. So I think just mechanically, one of the easiest things that we can offer is a Beast Academy online institutional account. And again, you don't need to be a public school in order to get one of these. As I mentioned, we work with plenty of nonprofits and other kinds of institutions. And these could even be like network-wide approaches. So the way these accounts work is, honestly, you could have as few as 5 students in one of these accounts, or you could have an account like Brian has with 5,000, or anything in between. And once you have those licenses, you're essentially free to do with them as you please, right? Like you could have, students over here. You could have a satellite campus in Australia. One of those seats could be given to a student over there. And Beast Academy Online, in those institutional accounts, everyone gets access to everything. So you have all of the curriculum content that we've developed from levels 1 through 5 inclusive. All of the guidebooks are digitized. They're put right in there. So it can operate as a standalone, and does for plenty of places out there. So just as a like pinpoint specific answer to your question, that's probably the easiest way to get started, would just be to start with a Beast Academy Online account. Again, it could be as few as 5, it could be anything more than that. And then start, delivering it to the students, start working with them, see how that goes, and then we would go with you from there.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I jump back in, Linda, with some questions? Is that okay? I know you have a list, so feel free. I know you already know Brian, but we can carry this conversation on another day too if you have more questions. Our district is just now implementing NWEA's MAP assessment. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Brian, or if you all use that. As you know, I'm an epidemiologist, so I'm super interested in outcomes and measuring progress. I don't know if you or Grayson have any insight on how well Beast Academy or the upper grade AOPS curriculum allows gifted students to grow. One of the challenges is gifted students don't get to grow an academic year in a year because they're starting already knowing at least 6 months worth of material or more. They know the entire year's worth of curriculum. So unless we're dosing them with new content, they don't actually have a chance to grow. What I'm really curious about is how do you measure if giving this multivitamin or better of Beast Academy and AOPS to a gifted student, how well does it allow them to grow compared to their standard traditional fare that they were getting in the traditional math cafeteria? Any thoughts on that?
Can I actually just jump in right now? Because I have only like 3 minutes left and then I have to go, but I want to answer this question. So we actually have specific experience in using the NWEA map as a measurement of growth with Beast Academy. So a few years ago, we were working with Mankato area public schools. We still work with them actually, but we were specifically doing a 2-year study on the efficacy of Beast Academy in the classroom. This was not only a quantitative study, but a qualitative study as well. So we were, looking at, hey, what happens with student achievement and growth when students use Beast Academy regularly? And in this context, the average user was using Beast Academy 30 minutes twice per week. So really only an hour a week. That's not even a very large commitment. There were 3 student populations that were broken into 2 groups: students who got Beast Academy and students who did not. So there were gifted and talented students who received Beast, comparison math group of GT kids who did not get Beast. There were non-gifted students who got Beast Academy, non-gifted students who did not. And then there were a group called the Rising Scholars. The Rising Scholars in Mankato are students who show promise and potential in math, are not quite yet scoring at a level that would include them into gifted and talented services, but they're on their way. And these are all students from historically marginalized backgrounds and communities. So across the board, when comparing the students who used Beast Academy for an hour a week relative to those who did not, on the NWEA map, for any of those, for those of you that are, aware of, kind of what the points mean and the gaps and everything like that, students grew on average about 10% or 10 points over their comparison match group peers who did not receive Beast Academy. This is highly significant. This is a crude way of saying it, but like if I had to describe this, it's like if you've never heard of the map, 10 points on that is like roughly, I don't know, a grade level or more's worth of progress above and beyond what would be expected. And so that was eye-opening. Now, fascinatingly, even though every group grew, the group that grew the most were the Rising Scholars. And that was just so wonderful for us to see. And it goes back to your point, Allie, that like, you shouldn't, only gifted kids should, those shouldn't be the only ones that are receiving this. Really, any and every student, if given to them at the right level with the right scaffolding and support around them, can latch on to this approach and really fly. And then one other thing that I just want to leave everyone with, because this was the thing that really mattered most to me as an educator. The achievement was great. Quite honestly, we expected to see that. Maybe not at that level, but we expected to see growth. What we didn't necessarily bargain for were the changes in growth mindset for students. So students were surveyed before using Beast and then really after using Beast. And one of the questions that they were asked, really kind of like what it got at was is one's ability to do and engage in difficult math like a static trait? And most students thought, it was phrased differently for elementary learners, of course, but most students, when asked that, they thought that yes, it was. In other words, being able to do hard math is kind of like your an adult's height, right? If you're 6'1", you're 6'1". That's not changing, right? If you can do hard math, you're just lucky enough that you were born to be able to do hard math, and it's not really something that you can learn how to do. Now, after having used Beast Academy for the duration of the school year, students significantly changed their tune. And they, in other words, like, they believed that you can learn to do difficult math if you practice, much in the same way that you can learn to play violin, or you can learn to play tennis or golf. I'm still learning that last one. I'll get back to you on that. But this was really the powerful finding for us, because this feeds into, again, the participation, the engagement, the belief in oneself, and all of those things can really carry the day. And so if I were to just leave you with a bumper sticker for this, it's that we, as an organization, we believe, we use the term math people, or a math person colloquially. Math people aren't just born. Math people can be made. But you have to start early and keep going. Yep.
Thank you, Grayson. I know you've got to run.
To jump. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Thank
See
you
guys.
so much. Really
Bye-bye.
appreciate you being here, Grayson. Bye.
See you.
Okay. Well, Brian, I know that your time is valuable too, and somebody's probably banging on your door waiting for you to bring Beast Academy to them.
Yeah.
But I did want to give you a chance to, just kind of close us off with any words of wisdom that you might have for me as a parent advocate. You mentioned parent engagement, and engaging with administration was really important. It is really challenging right now. I'm going to be honest with you. Teachers are fried. And our state, Virginia, is like many others. There's new adoptions coming down from the state and new measurements. And now they're enamored with growth measurements, which I think are great, but it's making a lot of people nervous. So this is a very fraught time. Our gifted program has also gone through a lot of challenges about identification. So I'm rebuilding trust, and I'm rebuilding conversation, and trying to rebuild an atmosphere of collaboration. But it's an uphill journey right now for me. What are your words of wisdom about creating that engagement, and what can you add to maybe what I'm doing? I'm sorry, that's a loaded question, but I'll take anything you have to offer.
Well, great. Yeah. I mean, listen, one of the things I wanted to say today is that I work really hard to help establish and sustain just math clubs in elementary and middle school. I'm talking about after school math clubs, without barriers. And after the pandemic, obviously we lost a lot of momentum. And so I'm still struggling today, where we have communities that really, really value academics, and they've embraced the vision that we've put out about math, but the schools are not offering math clubs. And what I've had to tell parents when I see them at outreach opportunities like math nights, math competitions, out in the community period, is that, as with anything, you're your own best advocate, and you have to know that, like, communicating what it is that you want out of your child's educational experience to a school should not be viewed as something that you're going to necessarily receive like a backlash from, because in our community we have a lot of emphasis on athletics, right? There's a lot of people that value that here, and through boosters and advertising and everything, there's a lot of support for that. And I just tell parents, academics is the same thing. You just have to convey that your child's love of mathematics or robotics or whatever is no different than some child's love of lacrosse or football, and you have to advocate for yourself. And so the thing that's troubling the most to me is that what I've noticed about the community's willingness to embrace, the system's willingness to embrace math, a lot of it depends on the people and the relationships you make. And when people go away, they retire, they resign, whatever, your progress can be thwarted. So like a lot of what I'm thinking about now is ways to build that sustainability so that we're not as reliant on people moving around or leaving and things like that, and so that we can just truly ingrain it into the culture of the school system. So there's still lots of work to be done, for sure.
All right. So I have one question I saw come in from Jennifer McKendry, and I know Kim may also have a question too. And then I promise I will let you go in 4 minutes. Is that okay with you, Brian?
Totally okay with me.
Okay. So I did want to, back to nuts and bolts, let anybody who happens to be listening know that AOPS is accredited through the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, WASC. So it is accredited if you have a middle schooler who wants high school credit. Just run it by your principal first, and then you can move that right onto the transcript. And Beast Academy is considered honors math. So if somebody is struggling in math and is interested in the notion of being in an honors math program, and that's somehow motivating, then there is that too. The question that came in was, what age would you recommend kids start with Beast Academy? I know Grayson said 6 to 13. What if you have a precocious 4 or 5-year-old? You know, is it worth digging into some of the puzzles, or what have you seen works there?
Yeah, I think it's a precocious 4 or 5-year-old would be fine. They've expanded the content down to level 1, which is, I'd say it's equivalent to some of the math that you're seeing in first grade in terms of like the arithmetic. And I believe they've added maybe some read aloud functions, but again, if they're precocious 4 or 5-year-olds, they would be fine starting at level 1, level 2, etc.
Okay. I've done level 2 with young kids, and I frankly found it interesting and engaging for me. So it's not something that parents should necessarily expect to park their kid at and not be involved with. As a professional coach, I love to see parents engage with their kids and model for their kids what it is like to have that patience you were talking about, Brian, and really make math a part of the conversation, honestly, in everyday language. I think that's how we bring in some of the playfulness and the interest and curiosity in math is bringing into the grocery store. All right, Kim, we're going to let Brian go soon, but Kim, if you have any questions, pop off mic. I see great discussion. She's saying, thank you very much for all you're doing, Brian.
Of course. And I just want to say, I wrote something down. Grayson had an absolute nugget that he dropped when he said, falling in love with the problem,
Yes.
Not just the solution, the intellectual joy that comes from persevering. That's my takeaway from today.
Yes, absolutely. I would say that too. And I think you actually were the one who brought in the word playfulness regarding that. That might have been you. And I'm not sure I've heard anybody put that word together with math before. So I'm going to credit you with that one. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I want to keep seeing some videos on LinkedIn. If you can, in your classrooms, sharing what you're doing there so you can inspire all of us. And Linda, thank you for your work on Steam Truck. And I'll put a link in the show notes to your work too. Thank you so much for your great questions. I'm going to stop recording now.
Thank you. This has been phenomenal. I didn't know what to expect coming in, but I saw Brian on LinkedIn, and I know,